Hello, I'm Derek Townsend. I'm your IT354 class. This is week 7. This is week seven's assignment. We're going to be covering prototypical inheritance and its attributes, functions, and this and scope and all that. And so to start off with, this bulk of code this bulk of code right here, the dog and cat section, will primarily be the code we'll be focusing on. So these basically are both the same classes. They have the same function. They just print off a little message saying like cat meows, dog barks, and prototypical inheritance is kind of basically like the way that everything that JavaScript builds objects, the way the objects are built in the background of JavaScript, and it's pretty clever and neat. Well, I don't know if it's clever, but it's very interesting the way it handles objects because everything in JavaScript is almost like one big object, and it's a bit wild at times. So let's start off like kind of working our way backward. So these two things I just said are pretty much the same. It's just that JavaScript made them like this is the way that like classes are built in the back behind the scenes. So instead of construct like when you're setting up like a nice little what is it called? When you're setting up a class, like setting up the class cat, we have the same thing here, this dot name, and this is referring to the scope of the function, like the within this function. And something neat about this is it's not affected by prototype. So normally, like you would have to use bind this in order to maintain the like what this represents when we're referencing new things. So if we go here and when we're looking at cat.prototype.meow, this is essentially the same thing as just us putting bark here in classes, like within a class. So if we were to look at this like more in depth, it would be like bark or yeah, it would be like dog.bark or excuse me, dog.prototype.bark, and it'll be console logging, same thing. It'll have it'll basically just like another function. It'll display. I'll show you better off in a second, but like it. So we're going through this. So the way that function you used to have to make classes in JavaScript was by doing this method. You would add function. You would have like the function cat or whatever your name of your function is. So this will be your constructor. You set up everything you need within it. It'll get everything done, like everything that needs to be established. Then you set up your helper functions. So and then this would be how you do it. You'd be like so. It would be like the name of the class, prototype dot function name, and then you do function name, and then you would add the whatever the function does. And prototypical inheritance kind of works its way through the way it will look. It looks for objects within your. It looks for functions, attributes, and all that stuff within the scope of that object, and it just goes through and it keeps looking for prototypes and seeing, and it just basically it sees how you build out your classes and everything. So the easier way to show this is to like take this code. We'll take it bit by bit. So this is just the typical about.blank page we're using right here because this is kind of more difficult to show in REPL. So if we go here, we create the function cat.name, and then we add the prototype method to it, and it'll do this. Just make sure, yeah, it's recording. All right, so we see that this returned undefined. This returned, this returned what we're printing out. And if we were to create a cat object, let's say cat, we're going to create in a global scope because it shows it better. So cat.new cat, and then we're going to say like Dave or Mavis. Let's go Mavis. Cat Mavis, and when we look at this, we see the name, we see the attribute of name, and the value of Mavis here, and then we see all the prototypical functions, and we have the constructor here that essentially just says that it's taking in the name, and if we go here, it's just basically just going through like name, so it shows all the features of it, and it looks at the prototype objects like the define, getter, setters, all the things that just come naturally when it's like these are all the background functions that are being made and maintained for us by JavaScript. And each of these like prototypical objects we go into, like if we go into meow, it also have its own prototypical functions. that just allow JavaScript that help JavaScript in the background. So these are just a lot of like background functions to help improve the way JavaScript handles variables and objects and everything involved with it. And we look at that. So, and if we were to do the same thing for the class here, I'm pretty sure it should show something similar, if not the exact same thing. So let's just put this here, and then we do dog equals new dog, and let's call it Brad. And yes, it does the same thing. So these are exactly the same. It handles everything exactly the same. It's just like less code. So that's the syntactical sugar bit of it. It's just like instead of writing prototype every time you want to add a new function to your thing, you just now have to like say like add a just type in the name of function and that's it and add functionality. And as I said before, normally if we had functions like this, the scope of this would be lost. But prototype setting up as a prototype kind of gets around that. I feel like that covers the bulk of that pretty well. It's very confusing because this is very roundabout in a lot of ways. But let's get into the other part of this that I don't like. This is a so now we're going to move on to global object versus a window object. So global object is global. Okay, let's say another way. Global scope is kind of defined by what like within your context of your JavaScript. Bit weird to explain, but like you'll see, there's a difference between global scope and window scope. So global scopes are like essentially like when you define a variable. Like this is a worse, like a very basic example. But like you're defining a variable without var, let, or const or anything like that, and this is now a global object. And if you use this to refer to the like when we're talking about it within the node, within our JavaScript, not referring to a window at all, we will be talking about the global scope or the global scope. Yes. And in REPL, you can't really access the window scope. It'll give you. I'll show you in a second that it will throw an error. So let's run this, and we have. Let's comment this out so we can clutter this a bit less. So yeah. So now this dot a refers to the global scope, the global context. Like a is now a variable to the globe, like a variable within the global scope. We can also just reference this as console.log a. I think this should work. Yeah, it does. Okay, just had to check. But I think some weird things start to happen if we start using var a here. Let's see what this does. Yeah, it overwrites the global scope. This is why. Let's try let. See if that does anything. See if it changes it even more. It doesn't like that. So so this is why you basically shouldn't use global scope. Well, part of the reason you shouldn't use global scope because it interacts weirdly with certain things. Like using var there, you saw that it overwrites it, but using let, it's weird because that's also due to the fact that var lets you like use the name of variables that already exist, but let and const don't let you do that. So it's double edged. It's a bit weird. But yeah, so let's keep moving on. Oh wait, let is. I forgot about const. I've been coding too much in Swift. I might be misspeaking sometimes. Okay, so now if we move ourselves to a window object or window scope, we're gonna go to about.blank. Oh, that most of that is gone. But yeah, let's see what was that referencing here. Oh, there it is. So the window scope. Oh wait, I remember now. Okay, so if we console log window or what is it? This, it'll give us an error like this saying window is not defined here because we're within the scope. And if we take this into so window refers to the browser window. Like this in this like for the window scope, this refers to everything within the context of the window. and it returns true because this equals window. So whenever we do like, so this is equivalent to saying like, so as you can see, like if we type in this just right now, it's like, oh, you can now see all the attributes and functions of window. So let's define a variable. We'll do the same thing, like a equals window scope. And now if we do this dot a, we get window scope. And yeah, so you can see that like it throws an error here, but here it's pretty safe. But here, like we can reference the window, and the window we have like you could define variables there, but I don't like it's not once again not recommended for various reasons. I just personally don't like it. It just I find it a bit like sketchy to do. But yeah, it's better just to keep things confined to the scope that like within functions and all that. I think I've used global scope once just to get around some issues I was having with classes and just say like, okay, I just want all classes to have access to this with little like interruption. Thank you for your time. I feel like I covered this as best I could. Goodbye.